2 years ago, on Halloween night, I learned something I still think about whenever someone knocks on my door late at night. Sometimes the person standing outside isn't there for candy at all. It was a Friday, and almost everyone I knew was out celebrating. My friends were at Halloween parties, probably drinking, dressing up, and enjoying the night. I was doing homework. It wasn't exactly the most exciting way to spend Halloween, but I didn't mind that much. I had work that needed to be finished, and getting it out of the way meant I could relax afterward. Downstairs, my mom and dad were doing what they normally did on Halloween. They were handing out candy to trick-or-treaters. Our house wasn't exactly a popular stop in the neighborhood. We were pretty much the only house on the block that handed out candy, so most kids didn't bother coming. From their perspective, walking all the way to one house for candy simply wasn't worth it. That night was no different. Eventually, my mom called me downstairs. She told me that our neighbors had come over because they needed help with their Halloween costumes for a party. My parents and the neighbors were going upstairs to work on them, and she asked me to watch the front door while they were gone. I didn't have a problem with it. By then, I'd finished my homework, and the front door was close enough that I could hear someone knock while I played my PS4. I figured I'd just hand out candy whenever someone showed up. For the next hour, almost nothing happened. Only a couple more trick-or-treaters came to the door. That was completely normal for our neighborhood. Then, around 11 p.m., I heard a knock. I immediately thought it was strange. It had been nearly an hour since the last person came by, and 11 at night seemed pretty late for trick-or-treating. Still, I didn't have any reason to assume anything was wrong. I grabbed some candy and walked toward the front door. There was one detail about our front entrance that mattered more than I realized at the time. Between the front door and our living room was a small room. Whenever we opened the front door, we locked the door leading into the living room behind us. We did that because of our dogs. If we didn't, they would rush toward the front door, start barking, and potentially get outside. So I followed the usual routine. I stepped into the small room. I locked the door behind me. Then I opened the front door, and that's when I saw him. Standing directly in front of me was a man who looked enormous. He was at least 6 feet 3 inches tall, with a somewhat muscular build. But what immediately caught my attention wasn't his size. It was the mask. He was dressed as Michael Myers. And this wasn't some cheap Halloween costume thrown together at the last minute. The costume looked expensive. The mask, the clothing, the whole appearance was convincing enough that, standing there under the Halloween night, he looked disturbingly real. But the strangest thing was that he didn't say anything. Not a word. He simply stood there and stared at me. He didn't say trick or treat. He didn't hold out a bag. He didn't even move. He just stood completely still. For a moment, it felt like I was looking at a statue. I assumed he was trying to stay in character and scare me. It was working. I was only about 5 feet 10, so standing face to face with someone that much larger than me was already intimidating. The silence made it worse. Eventually, because the situation was becoming so awkward, I decided to break it myself. I said, "Trick or treat," for him. Then I held out the candy. That's when everything changed. Instead of taking the candy and leaving, the man took several steps forward, into my house. My stomach dropped. There is an unspoken rule when you're trick-or-treating. You take the candy, say thank you, and walk away. You don't simply enter someone's house without being invited. But he had just crossed the threshold. And then I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. He didn't have a bag, no bucket, no pillowcase, nothing. Suddenly, the entire situation made sense in the worst possible way. He wasn't there to trick or treat. Before I could say anything, he reached into his pocket. My eyes immediately went to his hand. I didn't want to see what he was pulling out. Part of me already knew. When he brought it out, I realized it was a knife. And suddenly I understood exactly how trapped I was. I'd locked myself inside that small entrance room. The man was significantly larger than me. He was holding a knife, and he was standing between me and the only way out. There are always those imaginary situations people create in their heads where they picture themselves becoming the hero. They imagine fighting back, disarming someone, finding the perfect escape, somehow taking control. But none of those thoughts helped me then. My body simply stopped cooperating. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't think clearly. It felt almost unreal, like I was watching someone else's life instead of standing inside my own. And one horrifying thought entered my mind. What a ridiculous way to die. On Halloween, inside my own house, stabbed by someone dressed as Michael Myers. I genuinely believed, for those few seconds, that this was how my life was going to end. Then the man did something I never expected. He reached up and took off the mask. He looked at me and suddenly said, "I'm just messing with you, bro." I was still frozen. My mind hadn't caught up with what had just happened. I couldn't immediately respond. My body was still reacting as though I were in immediate danger. Then he asked, "I scared you though, right?" I managed to force out a response. "Yeah, you got me." He put the knife back into his pocket. The relief was immediate, but it didn't erase the fear. He still had the knife. He was still standing in my house, and I still had no idea what kind of person I was dealing with. Then he asked if he could have the candy. He admitted that he hadn't really come there to trick or treat. He was hungry. I gave him some. I wasn't about to argue with a strange man who had already entered my house while carrying a knife. He began explaining himself. He said he'd just left a friend's Halloween party. He'd noticed that our lights were on and decided to stop by and prank me. It became increasingly obvious that he was drunk and high. Apparently, in his mind, showing up at a stranger's house dressed as Michael Myers and pretending to be dangerous was a funny prank. To me, it had been one of the most frightening moments of my life. He kept talking. He told me that he owned a tattoo place about an hour away. He said I seemed pretty chill and suggested that we should hang out sometime. Then he told me to put his name and number into my phone. I did, not because I actually wanted to become friends with him. I did it because I was still scared, and I didn't want to do anything that might make him angry. I agreed with pretty much everything he said. I just wanted the conversation to end. But it didn't. The minutes seemed to drag on. He kept talking, while I remained painfully aware of the knife in his pocket and the fact that he was still standing between me and the exit. Something about him felt wrong. Maybe it was the way he'd entered my house. Maybe it was the knife. Maybe it was simply the fact that he was intoxicated and behaving unpredictably. Whatever the reason, every instinct I had was telling me that I needed to get him outside. So I made something up. I told him I had something cooking in the oven and needed to check on it. I said I'd text him later. Fortunately, he believed me. He said okay and finally turned around. He walked out of the house. The moment he crossed the doorway, I moved as quickly as I could. I shut the door. Then I locked it. My heart was pounding so hard that it felt like it might actually burst out of my chest. For a few seconds, I simply stood there, trying to process what had just happened. I didn't call the police. Looking back, that decision might surprise some people, but at the time I believed the guy hadn't actually intended to hurt me. He had been drunk, high, reckless, and unbelievably creepy, but he'd eventually admitted it was a prank and left. I still have his number saved in my phone to this day. We've never called. We've never texted. And that's exactly how I wanted to stay. Eventually, I was able to laugh about the experience. It became one of those bizarre stories I could tell my friends, something that sounded almost unbelievable when spoken aloud. But the fact that I can laugh about it now doesn't change what happened that night. Because the entire situation could have ended differently. He had a knife. He was inside my house. He was much larger than me. And for several terrifying moments, nothing was stopping him from using it. I got lucky. That's the part one remember most. So if there's one thing I took away from that Halloween night, it's simple. Be careful who you open your door for, especially when it's late. Because sometimes the person standing outside isn't there for candy. And sometimes, you don't find out what they really wanted until they're already